The woman across the table suddenly pushed her chair back. Then she stood, reached into her purse, and placed a small velvet ring box between them. The restaurant seemed to go silent. She looked at him with trembling eyes. "Daniel, will you marry me?" Daniel Carter stared at the box. He had expected an awkward dinner. Maybe a polite goodbye. He had never expected this. 6 hours earlier, he had been changing a flat tire in his driveway while his 9-year-old daughter watched from the porch. "Dad, you're going to be late." Daniel glanced at his old watch. She was right. He wiped his hands on a rag and looked at the message on his phone. "Tonight, 7:30, Blue Willow Cafe. Her name is Claire. Please don't cancel this time." His sister had arranged the blind date. Daniel had refused twice. Not because he didn't want companionship. Because 5 years earlier, his wife had died after a sudden illness, leaving him with a little girl who still slept with her mother's old scarf beneath her pillow. Daniel had spent years becoming everything his daughter needed: father, cook, homework helper, nighttime protector, and occasionally, the person who cried quietly in the garage when nobody was watching. Dating had never seemed important, but his daughter had noticed the loneliness. Last Sunday, she'd slipped a folded piece of paper into his lunchbox. It said, "Dad, you deserve someone who asks how your day was." So Daniel went. Not for himself. For her. At the Blue Willow Cafe, Claire was already waiting. She was 38, neatly dressed, calm on the outside, but there was something guarded in her expression. Daniel sat down. She smiled. "I'm sorry. I almost didn't come." Daniel nodded. "Me too." For the first time that evening, she laughed. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't magical. It was simply honest. And that was enough to make the dinner feel different. They talked about ordinary things. Work, family, bad coffee, children. Claire didn't ask how much money he made. Daniel didn't ask why she was still single. Then the first surprise arrived. A little boy at the next table suddenly began choking on a piece of food. His mother froze. The father wasn't there. Before anyone else moved, Daniel was already standing. He calmly helped the frightened child, guided his mother through what to do, and stayed until the boy was breathing normally again. Claire watched him carefully. "You knew exactly what to do." Daniel shrugged. "Parenting teaches you a lot." But that wasn't the whole truth. Years earlier, Daniel had volunteered with a community emergency response team. He had stopped after his wife became sick. Claire didn't know that yet, and Daniel didn't notice that her expression had changed. The date continued. Then came the second twist. Claire received a phone call. She stepped outside. When she returned, her face had gone pale. "My father is in the hospital." Daniel immediately stood. "Do you need a ride?" She shook her head. "I'll call a cab." Daniel looked toward the window. Rain had started falling hard. "I'll take you." She hesitated. "You barely know me." Daniel picked up his coat. "That's okay." Neither of them mentioned that the date was over. Daniel drove her across town. At the hospital entrance, Claire suddenly stopped. She looked at him as though she wanted to say something. Instead, she whispered, "Thank you." Daniel smiled. "Call me if you need anything." Then he drove home. He assumed that was the end. It wasn't. The next morning, Daniel's daughter found an envelope tucked beneath their front door. Inside was a handwritten note from Claire. "Your daughter wrote something beautiful about you." Daniel froze. He had never told Claire about the note in his lunchbox. Then he noticed a second piece of paper. A photograph. It showed Claire's father years earlier, standing beside a younger Daniel at a volunteer emergency response event. Daniel stared at it. He remembered the man immediately. Mr. Bennett. The stranger who had once helped Daniel get his wife to the hospital during the worst night of his life. The same man who had quietly paid for several of Daniel's wife's treatments when Daniel couldn't afford them. Daniel's throat tightened. Claire had discovered who he was. But there was still something he didn't understand. That evening, Claire came to his house. She didn't arrive in a luxury car. She didn't bring flowers. She simply stood at the door holding the velvet ring box. Daniel stared at it. "Claire, what's going on?" She took a breath. "My father remembered you." Daniel said nothing. "He told me what you did for our family years ago." Daniel looked away. "I only helped." Claire shook her head. "You gave us something when we had nothing." Daniel finally understood. Her father hadn't merely been a stranger he'd once helped. He had been the person who had helped Daniel's family survive their darkest season. Two families had crossed paths years before. Neither knew their stories would meet again. But Claire wasn't finished. She opened the ring box. "I know this sounds insane." Daniel gave a nervous laugh. "A little. I don't know if we're ready for marriage." He looked at her. "Then why are you asking?" Her eyes filled with tears. Because last night, when my father was scared and I was terrified, you didn't try to impress me. You didn't ask what I could give you. You simply helped. She swallowed. And I realized that's what I've been looking for. Daniel stared at the ring. Then he thought about his daughter. About the note. About all the years he had convinced himself that being strong meant never needing anyone. He gently closed the box. Claire's face fell. I'm sorry, he said. She nodded, trying to hide her disappointment. Then Daniel smiled. I can't marry you tonight. She blinked. But I would like to take you on another date. Claire laughed through her tears. Another date? Daniel nodded. A real one this time. 3 months later, Claire sat at Daniel's kitchen table helping his daughter with a science project. Daniel stood in the doorway, watching them argue over whether a volcano could actually erupt indoors. His daughter looked up. Dad, yeah. Are we keeping her? Claire burst out laughing. Daniel smiled. I think she might be keeping us. A year later, Daniel and Claire married in a small garden ceremony. There was no mansion, no dramatic crowd, no perfect fairy tale, just family, a few close friends, Daniel's daughter carrying the rings, and Claire's father sitting in the front row, smiling through tears. Before the ceremony began, Daniel looked at his daughter. She whispered, "See? I told you." He laughed. "You did." She pointed toward Claire. She asked how your day was. Daniel looked at the woman he never expected to meet. Then he looked at the child who had taught him how to hope again. And he finally understood something. Sometimes life doesn't bring you what you thought you needed. Sometimes it brings you a person who reminds you that your heart was never broken beyond repair. It was simply waiting for a reason to open again. Because the greatest surprises in life don't always arrive when you're searching for love. They arrive when you've finally learned how to recognize kindness.